So now we have our LEDs for the west side of the bridge wired, as well as our servo. And now we just need to wire our ultrasound sensor. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip the board over. I'm gonna hold the breadboard in place just to make sure it doesn't fall out and all our connections don't come loose. I'm just gonna hold the breadboard, flip it over, and now here's our wires for our servo. If you want, you can go ahead and tape them down just to kind of keep things neat. So I'm just gonna go ahead and tape that down there just so they're not as much in our way. So now we've got our ultrasound sensor. So to wire this, we're gonna need 4 male to female wires. All right, so there's our male end and our female end. And we're gonna attach them to the pins on our ultrasound sensor. So the first pin here, you can see it says GND, that's our ground. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick a wire there. And then we've got our echo, and our echo, I'm gonna put a white wire on, so when we get to the other side, I'm gonna wanna remember that. So white is echo, red is trig, and then for VCC, I'm gonna put a red wire. So now we've got our 4 wires attached here. Just like we did for the servo, I'm gonna wanna cut a slit for the wires to go in. I'm gonna go ahead and cut a different slit just so you kind of keep the bundles of wires in order. So just next to where the servo was, I'm gonna go ahead and cut a slit. Remember, make sure there's nothing underneath the board. Make sure your hands are out of the way. You definitely don't want to cut into your hands. So I'm just gonna make another little slit. Awesome. And then I'm gonna insert our 4 wires into that slit. So we'll start with the green one. So there's our 4 wires threaded through to the top side. And then I'm gonna go ahead and flip the board back over. So again, I'm gonna wanna hold the breadboard in place while I flip to make sure everything stays where it needs to be. So there's the breadboard, and we can see our 4 wires coming up on the west side of our bridge. So just like we did with our servo, we're gonna connect it to ground and 5 volts at the bottom of the breadboard. So I'm gonna go and take my red and yellow and green wire and put them under the breadboard. Again, our red went to the VCC, so that's our 5 volts. So I'm gonna go ahead and insert that into the 5 volt rail. So there we have it, 5 volt rail. And then remember, the green one was going to ground on our servo. So that one I'm gonna insert into the ground rail. So now I've got the green one, which was ground, going to the blue negative rail, and the VCC, which is our power, going to the red rail. And then we can come to the back, and this is now where we need to remember which pin is which. So the white one was the echo. So the echo and the trig is the yellow. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the trig into A4 on the Arduino, and the white, which was the echo, into pin A3 on the Arduino. So now we've got A4 and A3. Again, we've got our trig into A4, our echo into A3, and our ground and power connected onto the bottom rail of our breadboard. So we are almost ready to test it, but we've got one last step. So we have basically things connected to our rails on our breadboard, but our Arduino is not actually connected to it. So right now, this positive rail that we've got all our 5 volts connected to isn't actually getting 5 volts. So we're gonna go and take that from the Arduino. So in order to connect our 5 volts to our Arduino, I'm gonna go ahead and take a red jumper cable, and insert it into the 5-volt pin on the bottom. So the 5-volt pin on Arduino, and thread the wire to the front of our Arduino and insert it into that 5-volt rail. So see, it's on the bottom, that's our 5-volt rail. So now when we plug in our Arduino, the 5 volts will actually go into this bottom rail and be able to power our servo and our ultrasound sensor. And then same thing with ground, we also need our ground connected. So I'm gonna take another jumper and connect it to ground on the Arduino. So this is GND, that's our ground. So I'm gonna stick it in that pin. And then again, thread it underneath. And go ahead and connect it to our negative rail, our blue rail, which is gonna wanna be our ground rail. So now our green is going into our blue rail, which is our ground. So now this whole bottom blue rail is grounded through our Arduino, but we also have a ground up here, and we've got our LEDs going to ground through this resistor. And all of our grounds need to be connected. Otherwise, we don't have a complete circuit. So I'm gonna go ahead and take another jumper and just connect the bottom rail with the top rail. So then they'll be all kind of the same ground. So I'm at the bottom to the top. So now this whole top rail is also grounded, which will ground our LEDs. So now we've got a fully wired one-way west bridge. We can go ahead and upload the code to our Arduino and give it a test.